Welcome back. Let's begin in the UK. Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt will face former London Mayor Boris Johnson in the race to replace Theresa May as Prime Minister. Environment Secretary Michael Gove was eliminated in the 5th Tory leadership ballot. 10 MPs were nominated for the leadership, and it's taken a week to find the final 2 candidates. In the latest round of voting, Boris Johnson was backed by 160 Conservative MPs, while Jeremy Hunt secured 77 votes. The contest to replace Theresa May as Prime Minister will now move to the 160,000 grassroots Conservative Party members. The winner will be installed in Downing Street before the end of July. Next, Iran has accused the US of provoking war with drone operations over its airspace. Tehran says the spying operation was a blatant violation of international law. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif says it retrieved sections of the US military drone from its territorial waters. Washington has now banned US operators from entering parts of Iran's airspace. The Pentagon has called the loss of its drone an unprovoked attack in international airspace. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump says Iran has made a big mistake by shooting down a US spy drone. The Pentagon says the drone was in international airspace when it was shot down. Trump says he believes the drone was shot by mistake, while Iran says it will approach the UN to expose the US claims. Foreign Minister Javad Zarif accused the United States of waging economic terrorism against Iran. He says Iran will defend its skies, land and waters. Meanwhile, in Russia, Moscow has blamed the US for escalating tensions in the Middle East by sending more troops to the region. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov says countries in the Persian Gulf should strengthen their security measures. Ryabkov warned Washington's actions could plunge the region into a new conflict, which he said would be absolutely unacceptable. The US has sent 2,500 extra troops, additional Patriot missiles and drones to the region. The Saudi-led military coalition fighting in Yemen has launched a retaliatory attack near the port city of Hodeidah. The coalition says it hit Houthi rebel booby-trapped boats that were to be used for terrorist acts in international waters. This came after rebels targeted several Saudi cities with missile and drone strikes over the past 2 days. The UN has partially suspended aid to the Houthi-controlled capital Sana'a after Houthi fighters looted supplies. A UN official says the holdup will initially affect over 850,000 people in the city. However, ultimately, it will hit every part of Yemen under Houthi control. Moving on, Israel's Arab parties have decided to contest the September elections as a coalition to increase their representation in the Knesset. In a joint statement, 4 Arab parties say fighting elections together is the only choice for them. They will prepare a joint list of candidates instead of 2 separate lists to help Arab voters to unite behind them. These 4 parties fought the 2015 elections on a joint list, securing 13 seats, while they fared badly in the April elections, winning only 11 seats as they ran as 2 blocs. More than 1.5 million Arabs live in Israel, making up 20% of the country's population. U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton will meet the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on his visit to Tel Aviv on June the 23rd. Bolton will also meet Israeli national security and atomic energy officials during his trip. The diplomatic tour comes before a U.S.-led conference in Bahrain on June the 25th for the Palestinian peace plan. Finance ministers and business leaders from around the world will attend the conference to discuss investment in Palestine. The Palestinians have already boycotted the summit. European Union leaders have agreed to extend economic sanctions against Russia until the end of next year. The measures were originally imposed in 2014 over Russia's role in the Ukraine conflict and the seizure of Crimea. Preben Aman says Russia's inability to implement the Minsk agreements led to the extension. The measures will be applied to EU-based companies. The European Union says sanctions are limited to the territories of Crimea and Sevastopol. The EU's economic actions against Moscow include curbs on Russian energy, defense, and the finance sectors. New EU sanctions will require unanimity among all 28 national leaders of the bloc. Italy, Germany, and France have opposed the sanctions. European leaders gathered at the current EU summit are unable to agree on which candidates will fill the bloc's top jobs. The 28 premiers and heads of state met in Brussels for secret deliberations with no aides or phones allowed. Berlin and Paris have failed to agree on who should become the next leader of the EU Council and President of the Commission. French President Emmanuel Macron blocked German Chancellor Angela Merkel's pick for Commission President. None of the three leading candidates for the presidency could win the required support. Merkel cautioned European leaders over their choice of EU Commission chief.
The European Council had a full discussion of nominations, taking into account my consultations and statements made within the European Parliament. There was no majority on any candidate. The European Council agreed that there needs to be a package reflecting the diversity of the EU. We'll meet again on the 30th of June.
And in Georgia, at least 7 people have been injured in violent clashes between protesters and riot police. Rubber bullets and tear gas were fired as demonstrators tried to force their way into the parliament building. A visiting Russian lawmaker's speech to parliament sparked the unrest. The protest in the capital, Tbilisi, flared up suddenly as thousands of angry citizens took to the streets. Demonstrators pushed against lines of riot police, throwing bottles and grabbing riot shields from officers. Hours of violent confrontation landed dozens in the hospitals with injuries and gas poisoning. At least 35 passengers have died and more than 30 have been injured after a bus plunged into a gorge in India's northern state of Himachal Pradesh. The bus was on its way from Banjar town to Gadagushani in Kullu district. Many of the passengers were sitting on the roof when the bus fell into a 150-meter deep gorge. An average of 150,000 people die in road accidents each year in India. China's President Xi Jinping and North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un have met in Pyongyang. Xi says he hopes North Korea and the US will make progress by talking. President Xi's two-day visit is the first state visit to North Korea since 2005. It's taking place days before Xi is due to meet US President Donald Trump at the G20 summit. President Xi says China's friendship with North Korea will not be shaped by the international situation. He says China wants to play a constructive role in removing nuclear weapons from the Korean peninsula. North Korea's state media calls the visit proof of the strong ties between the two neighbors, despite both being under US pressure. Washington and Beijing are currently locked in a trade war, while North Korea and the US have reached a stalemate over failed nuclear talks. Three people have been killed after armed mobs stormed a town in India's West Bengal state. The attackers threw homemade bombs and fired weapons in the town of Barrackpur. 4 people were also injured in the riot. Police were forced to use tear gas and live fire to disperse the attackers. A curfew has been imposed on Barrackpur. Clashes in the West Bengal have killed nearly 20 people since India's mammoth elections in April and May. Sudan's ruling military council has sacked the country's prosecutor general as pro-democracy protests continue. The dismissal follows the military council's announcement that the mastermind of a crackdown on protesters had been identified. Talks between the military council and opposition collapsed when dozens of people were killed by an attempt to a Khartoum protest camp. In Ethiopia, African Union ministers have met to discuss Sudan's political crisis. Sudan is in political turmoil since the army took power after removing ex-president Omar al-Bashir in April. Now to Malawi, policemen were injured when protests against Electoral Commission chairperson Jane Ansah turned violent. The riot forced President Peter Mutharika to use a different route into the capital, Lilongwe. Pro-Malawi Congress Party demonstrators clashed with police in the capital, where they attacked riot police with stones. The protesters demanded the resignation of Electoral Commission chairperson Jane Ansah. The Malawi Congress Party has alleged foul play in the general elections. The outcome of the polls has been challenged in the courts. A panel of 5 judges will soon rule on whether to dismiss the case or not. Right, and with that, we're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere. More stories to follow. Welcome back. Now, washi paper was once an indispensable part of everyday Japanese life. Today, the art of making the traditional parchment by hand is dying out. More in this report.
The history of washi dates back 1,300 years. It has been used for everything from writing to making lampshades. The manufacturing process starts with mulberry plants.
Here we use mulberry paper. Its bark is long and fibrous, which gives the paper flexibility and good resistance.
Today, washi making is in danger of becoming a lost art. The product's market value has shrunk by over a quarter over the past 2 decades. But it can still serve a purpose today. Damaged old documents and manuscripts can be repaired and preserved using pieces of washi paper.
Thanks to the strength and fiber resistance of the mulberry plants, the washi paper began to be used to restore scrolls and other ancient documents in the world.
Despite being thinner than what the Japanese people call Western paper, washi is much stronger. It is thin, transparent, and doesn't need much adhesive to stick to surfaces.
This washi paper can be applied to a surface without using too much adhesive while keeping a good grip thanks to the fibers of the paper.
Preserving cultural artifacts might give traditional Japanese parchment a role in the modern world. It has already been used to save historical documents at the Louvre and the British Museum. Washi paper is also on the UNESCO list of intangible cultural heritage items.
Now, while the world draws attention to the plight of millions of migrants on World Refugee Day, in Germany, a group of deprived refugee children are defying all odds to pursue their dreams. Let's take a look.
Displaced from their homes charred by conflict, these refugee children are still shooting for stardom. In Berlin, a team of refugees has found hope and solace in sports to pursue semblance of a normal life. The children have the support of their coach, Kotiba Kasim Mante. A Syrian by origin, Mante has organized the first football tournament for refugees. The coach uses his command over the language and culture to make it all come together. Mante says that his motivation behind training refugees is to create a hospital environment for them.
My motivation is that the kids get to have some fun. They all love sport, and in the last few years, these difficult years, where they have had these experiences of fleeing and being driven out, and all this chaos, we are trying to help them forget a bit and find a bit of normalcy and be able to measure themselves against other children. Have some fun.
So schnell wie möglich zu vergessen.
Most of the children have fled from war zones and are living in difficult conditions. The football coach Kasim Manti wants to help the children get away from their problems and live a balanced life.
At the end of the day, it offers a bit of balance to the other problems which they have at home, the adults in their life, whom they have to spend the whole day with.
The refugee children are resident in the container villages dotted around Berlin, which are crowded and offer little privacy.
Theo, du hast recht! Theo!
Let's take a look at the world of business. Stocks in Asia have had a mixed trading morning with growing tensions in the Middle East after Iran shot down a US drone. Mainland Chinese stocks rose, with the Shanghai Composite up by 0.44%. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index has declined. Japan's Nikkei 225 is fractionally lower. Over in South Korea, the Kospi has traded lower as shares of LG Chem declined more than 1%. In Australian markets, stocks have also slipped. Overnight on Wall Street, the S&P 500 hit a record high after the Federal Reserve signaled rate cuts to counter the trade war. Meanwhile, Apple has joined a growing group of firms pushing the US government to drop plans for more tariffs on Chinese goods. Washington threatens to impose duties of $300 billion worth of Chinese products if the two sides don't reach a trade deal. In a letter, the tech giant said that the tariffs will hurt its global competitiveness. Apple say its Chinese competitors don't have a significant presence in the US will be hit by the extra tolls. It says the proposed duties will cover its major products, including the iPhone, iPad, and AirPods. Dell Technologies, HP, and Intel are among the companies who've already said the proposed tariffs will hurt their businesses. Well, that was all we have from our news bulletin at the moment, but do stay tuned. I'll be back at the top of the hour with your news headlines. Thanks for watching.